Well, hello everybody, welcome back to the shop. As promised, we're going to start on the chopper this weekend. We got that little paring knife all finished up. We're going to get it in the mail tomorrow probably. I was going to mail it last Saturday, but I had to work and I didn't, post office closed and all that at noon, so we'll get it in the mail tomorrow. I've designed a chopper. I've been spending most of the morning designing this chopper, and I was just going to freehand a chopper, but I decided that I'd make it within the parameters of an actual competition chopper, which can be no longer than 15 inches overall length, 10-inch blade, 5-inch handle. So I've drawn up some plans here. I've got out a piece of leaf spring. We're going to cut some steel out of that and we're going to get started. So let's take a look at the little plan I've drawn out. And we may not stay exactly with that, but I kind of like the design. So we'll probably try to stay pretty close to that design. So let's take a look at that now. So here's the knife we've designed. And I mean, that's going to be a big blade. It doesn't do it much justice looking at it here on paper. But those are the parameters, 10 inches by 5 inches. And I didn't show it on here, but the blade, the thickness, the width of the blade can be no more than 2 inches, front to back. I just thought if we were going to do a chopper, we might as well do it within the parameters of what an actual competition chopper would have to be. So I think it'll be fun. We're going to get this thing started today, and we certainly won't get it finished, but we will get it started. We should get the basic shape of the knife hammered out today, and we'll get it annealed, and hopefully we'll get maybe started on some grinding on it and try shaping, Because something I've learned is you're never going to come out with the exact shape of the knife that you want off of the anvil. It's just too much. We'll get it close, but the grinder that's what the grinder's for. We'll get it as close as we can. We'll get our thickness down the entire blade and tang proper, and we'll get the general shape of the thing done on the anvil. But then we'll do all our refining and shaping and grinding, on that belt grinder, so that we can get everything just right. So it's going to be fun. It's going to be kind of a big project. We're going to add a little brass to this one, some nice pins, and probably do some little bit of maybe colored epoxy inlay on the handle and that. We'll see. But it's going to be different. We're not going to fractal burn this one. We're going to do it a little differently. So appreciate y'all being here. Thanks for watching, and let's get to it. So we've got our piece of leaf spring laid out here on the table. And what we've got to decide here is the overall length of our knife. The overall length of our knife is going to be 15 inches. It's going to be about 1/4 of an inch thick, which I think is what we have about that right here. That's a little over 1/4 of an inch. But as we get up here, we're looking at 1/2 inch of steel right there, which leaves us quite a thick piece of steel that we can draw out, because to right there we're at a little around 12 inches where I've drawn the design out. I've redrew it several times, but we want to go, I think, at least that big. And like I said, that right there is at about 12. And see, this is where you kind of struggle when you use misshapen steel like this. A lot of these guys just buy a piece of steel the thickness they want and everything. But I like using this 5160 spring steel. It's a free piece of steel right there. So I think what we'll do is we'll cut this about there and we'll draw it out. See if we can't draw it out to our 15 inches, but I'm afraid, as thick as this is right here, even though we're going to draw it out another 3 inches or so back to here, we're still going to have too much steel. But the nice thing about it is we can always cut some off if we need to stay within our parameters. So I think we'll stick with that hunk right there, and we'll just have to cut some off. If we get drawing it out and it becomes too much, we'll just cut a little off. But you know, kind of a tough way to, you know, to have to guess at how much steel to use. You don't want to have too little. If you end up having too little steel, why then you just have to start all over, and we don't want to do that because this is a lot of work. So we'll cut it to the size I have it marked out with the torch. Then we'll grind those rough edges off of it, and we'll go ahead and get us a handle welded on it and get the forge fired up and start hammering on this piece of steel. I think that'll probably be too much. But if you have too much, you can always cut some off. If you don't have enough, you can't add any to it. So we'll go big and grind small. That's my motto, right? Well, I believe our torch was running out of acetylene gas. Couldn't get it to cut worth the hoop. So we're going with plan B. Alright guys, so we got our piece of 5160 leaf spring cut off and put in our vise here. Now we're just going to kind of clean all that paint and crap off of it. Well guys, we got our piece of steel cut and all cleaned up. You don't want all that paint, rust, and all of that old garbage on there. You want to start out with a pretty clean piece of steel. This is kind of a mess right here where we were cutting it with the torch, but we got this part all cleaned up. But this is a nice smooth edge here where we went ahead and cut it off with the cutoff saw. We're going to go ahead now, put this thing in the vise, and we'll get a handle welded on it. getting ready to put a handle on my piece of steel that I'm going to work, I like to put my rebar in the forge, and we'll get her red, and we'll taper this end. I found that if you taper that end down a little bit, it gives you a nicer area to weld on than if you just had that big round rebar sitting on the end of your steel. So that's what we're going to do now. See here, we've just taken the end of our rebar and kind of smashed it down a little bit. Now what we'll do is we'll take this over to the belt grinder, and we'll just make sure that's nice and flat, so that it'll sit nice and flat on our stock while we're waiting for a forge to warm up. So the first thing we're going to want to do, I've had to take the backside out of the forge because it's such a big piece of steel. We're only going to be able to work little parts of it at a time. So I've cranked it up pretty good, almost to forge welding temperature, because we're not going to be able to build a lot of heat inside of there because it's open on both ends now. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to get this pretty red. Then we're going to pull it out of there and get that bow out of that spring, get it flattened out. We didn't heat up the anvil today, preheat the anvil. It's not that cold. I think after working our steel on here for a little bit, it'll warm right up. That's a big hunk of steel. It'll put a lot of heat into this anvil pretty fast. We got most of our bow out of there. Well, what do you think? The handle was welded on a little crooked, but I think for the most part our spring steel is pretty straight. guys, here's where we are so far. We've gotten it drawn out quite a bit. We started out with about 12 inches. We're at 14 now. Now we're going to come in here, I think, because I don't want to draw any of this heavy end here out any farther than I have to. So we're going to come in here now and we're going to put our tang. We're going to start drawing, you know, we're going to flatten this out. We're going to start working on our tang. If we can get our tang, because we got to lift all this up in here. This is still pretty heavy. And all this steel, sorry about that, we got to lift all this here up. So we're going to start probably at about 4 inches, maybe 3 inches here, because we've got plenty of steel. So we've got to lift this up and bring this out for our tang. And I think if we get our tang shaped in here, that'll give us enough overall length. We're going to have to cut this. I want to get enough length out of it. We can cut this mess off here and just cut this off. And I think if we get our tang drawn out, we need 10 inches from the tip of the blade here to where the tang starts. So I think if we get our tang drawn out, we can cut this off up here, get rid of that mess from the torch, and with this angle down, we'll be about here with the end of our blade. And if we come back to here, I mean, we're still going to have to draw this out because it's too thick. So we're still going to have to draw it out, but it is going to be a really heavy knife, so we're going to leave it fairly thick because it's a chopper. But anyway, I think if we get our tang drawn out, that's going to give us some more length back here. And that should allow us, we may still have to draw this out some more up here, but that'll allow us some room to where we don't have to draw all this heavy steel out much further. But this end up here, if you remember, you can still see where I haven't really gotten it drawn out that far yet. That was almost a ½ inch thick up there. And we've got it, you know, thinned down and drawn out fairly well. But this all of this area still needs to be thinned down more. I know we're probably well over 2 inches on our width of our blade here. And we still need to come down on our thickness some. But I want to go ahead now and get started on working on this tang and see if we can't get that down. That'll give us a bunch more length. We draw out this tang here and save us from having to go drawing out so much more of that heavy steel on that end. So here's where we are. Been a long day hammering and pounding. and drawing this out. We've got our thickness here pretty well where we want it to be. We'll grind it down some. I just wanted to get it, try to just get it rough shaped up today. Feels real good in your hand. That's a big old heavy knife right there. We'll grind some of that weight out of it. We're over 2 inches here. Just a minute. So you can see right on this end here, we're just about right at our 2 inches. But as we come down this way, we've got, you know, 2 1/4 or so all the way down this blade. And we're a little long from the tip of the blade to the end of the blade here. This here, we're a little long right here. We're at about 10 1/4 on our blade, but we can grind that out of it. And then our overall length, we're at about 15 3/8. So, but you know my motto, build big, grind small. I'd rather have it too big so we can grind out, you know, grind it out and lose some of that and get our lengths and our parameters perfect, you know, on the grinder. But man, that was a lot of hammering. I've got 3 blisters on my hand. A piece of forged slag landed right in here and burnt me. But it's been, I think it's been 10 months since I got on the anvil and did any hammering. My right arm is sure sore. But we got it banged out. There's a little bend in it here where the tang is. I don't know if you can really see it on camera or not, but it kind of goes down a little bit from the blade. It still needs a little bit of straightening out and what have you. We planished it up a little bit, got rid of most of the hammer marks, the worst of them. And you know, we've got our basic knife forged out and hammered out. So a lot of these hammer marks, you know, they're almost impossible to get rid of. You can chase them forever. We'll let the grinder do that work. We'll clean these flats up real nice and everything. And next week we'll call this one part 1 of the chopper. And this is actually going to be a competition chopper because I was just going to throw together a chopper however I felt like doing it. Just let the steel take me where we were going. But I got to thinking about it and I thought, you know, if I'm going to make one, I might as well make it within the parameters of an actual competition chopper. So, see, where we're too wide, I like this contour down here, but this up here, we're going to grind this, kind of come down, and we'll take most of our meat out of this up here on this spine. It's a little rough and could really stand to be cleaned up a little. So most of that extra 1/4 of an inch will come out of the top of this spine. We'll lower that down and we'll give this a little bit more of a curve than what it has up there. And we've got a little bit of area back here where our weld is kind of mixed in with our steel on the tang, but I couldn't really go any shorter. I couldn't cut it off any shorter because I would be under my length of my handle. So I'm going to grind these little splits out here, and we'll just fill those in with some weld with the MIG, and we'll grind it up because that's just in the tang. That could be mild steel. It doesn't matter. So so we'll get that all welded in, cleaned up. We'll put it back in the forge next weekend and make sure it's good and flat and straight, and then we'll anneal it we'll stick in that bucket of floor dry I got over there, and we'll anneal this thing. And then we'll start doing our rough grinds and getting this thing shaped up. So, oh, I'll show you here in a minute. Well, we just showed you. I just measured it. So, but it comes pretty darn close to fitting in the drawing that I made earlier today. So, that's pretty cool. I mean, the handle's a little bit different angle, not much. I mean, you can lay this on that drawing, and it pretty much goes right with the drawing I made. A little difference, but not terribly. I kept walking over and looking at the drawing today while I was doing this, and kept checking on it to make sure that we were getting the shape we wanted. So I'm pretty happy with it. First time on the anvil in probably 10 months. I think the last time I was on that anvil was the 1st of June last year. I forged my brother's pipe wrench knife, and then I didn't even finish it. I forged it out and I did the rough grinds on it. It laid over there on the bench for, I don't know, months and months. I just finished that up here a while ago. We got into doing this remodel of this shop and everything, and just kind of let that go. And once we got the shop done, I just was really in need of a break, so I didn't do anything for 2 or 3 weeks there. Then we started working on a bunch of handle scales, and I made that fillet knife for a friend back home and where I grew up, and we just finished a paring knife for a friend of mine. I sharpened a bunch of knives for people and what have you, but we haven't actually made forged a knife in right around close to 10 months, just a little less. So my arm is pretty sore. That was a lot of steel to move, as thick as that was on that on the blade end of it. So I've got blisters, my arm hurts, but it was a lot of fun to get up here, get up on that anvil again and make that. I can't wait to see this knife done. This is going to be a really nice knife. So stick with me. Next weekend we'll do part 2. It's Sunday today. I got to wrap this up and get this video edited and get it uploaded. Got work tomorrow. Busy. So I really appreciate y'all watching. Thanks to all my subscribers, my new subscribers. I really appreciate everybody tuning in to see what we got going on in here. And remember, always be safe when you're working in your shop. Wear your safety gear. Love that shield I bought a while back, man. That makes it nice for grinding. That thing is crystal clear. But always wear your safety gear. Throw on a set of gloves when you're working with them cut-off wheels and stuff. You never know when one of them might break and come off and take off a finger or slice you open real bad. So I had one explode on me one time, and I mean, it just disintegrated. There wasn't a piece big enough to even find what was left of it. And I was cutting a piece of steel in the vise over there, and I got the thing cocked just a little bit, and it just shattered. I mean, it just disintegrated. It turned into dust, I guess, because I searched all over there and I could never find a piece of that 4.5 inch, you know, from my 4.5 inch angle grinder of that cutoff wheel. So they can really come apart. I was probably lucky that it disintegrated, because if it had busted apart in big chunks, you know, one of those pieces might have hit me. So always be careful. Get out to your shop and do something. Have a good time. Make something. Fix something. Clean your shop maybe. I bought a shop vac the other day, so now I can vacuum up all that sawdust and grinder shavings when I'm working on scales and what have you over there on the belt grinder. That's going to make it nice. So appreciate you being here, everybody. Part 2 next week. Tune in. We'll see you on the next one.